So it's telling me we're recording. All right. And I got 5:31, so we'll go ahead and start. I think Terry's listening in, but I think you're the only other person on here right now. So before I give my little spiel, I'll just Kevin,
Brad,
what questions do you have here?
Okay. I was just going to say, if it's just me, that nobody else shows up and you want to just cancel and I'll attend the next one, we can do that. I hate to waste your time for just one person here.
Well, it's absolutely fine, because at the end of it, I had one that wasn't attended by many people. I give a little bit of a rundown of it. You know, I'll answer questions. I'm recording it, so I post it so that as someone that might not have time to attend a meeting can listen to them, and maybe they have the same question. And quite frankly, I set these up thinking I wouldn't have much else going on. The last one I ended up doing from outside the courthouse in Perry County. This one, I didn't think I'd have anything on a Monday night, but I'm actually down in the village of Amanda right now for a 6:30 meeting. So I came down early because I wanted to give myself full time in case people did attend it. You know, I know you've been following some of the stuff online, but you're here, I'm here. So if you have any questions or need clarification on anything, I'll check the waiting room occasionally to see if anybody else joined. But for right now, it's just us. So ask away.
Okay. The question I had, and it was a couple of my neighbors had raised the same thing, so that's why I wanted to make sure I log on. The bond, the monies that we raised from the bond, their concern is that those monies aren't used for other things. Like, how much of that money is used for administrative purposes for this project, and then how much is used strictly for this project, and does any of it go to police or fire or anything else in the village?
It's a good question. They're not the first ones to ask it, but so because it is a levy for a specific project, none of the money goes into the general fund. None of the money would go to police or to code enforcement or mayor's court or streets, with this exception. The money can only be used for the water infrastructure replacement projects. So the portion of time that the village administrator might use in administering that project can come out of that. If after replacing a line, we need to repave 30 feet of a road and the funds allow for it, we could use that out of that fund. But it goes into, I call it a special fund. Brian, the fiscal officer, I'm going to try to remember, I think he called it a capital enterprise fund. I might have the name somewhat confused there. But the important thing is that money can only be used for the water infrastructure projects. And because it then becomes also part of our budget, it is subject to our audit every couple of years by the auditor's office too. So, you know, past this bond, none of that money is going to the police department to get new cruisers or hire other officers or anything like that. It will all be for water infrastructure and the related repairs and replacement.
Okay. And the next question would be the feed lines or mains or whatever they're called. Is the entire village being done? Like, I'm down on Creekview. Ours are relatively new compared to the rest of the village, but we still have the funky water. So is there all the lines being done or just a section?
No, it would be a project to replace all of the lines. And that's where, when we talked about once we have the funding, sitting down with the engineering firms to determine how to best replace all of the lines. Some areas of the village do have newer lines. They're not as old as the 80-plus-year-old lines in a lot of the village. So those areas might be done last. But the project is that we priced it out was for the entire linear footage of lines within the village. It's not going to be a 1 year or 2 year project, I wouldn't imagine, to replace them all. Maybe once they start working, it goes quicker than I assume. But at some point, once this passes, your lines down on Creekview would be slated to be replaced as well.
Okay. And then the process for selecting how it's done is based on the most critical needs, I would assume. Is that correct?
So once we had the funds, we would sit down with an engineering firm. Projects like this take a lot of planning, and we'll need permits or PTIs from the Ohio EPA to do some of the work. So we'll sit down with the engineering firm to figure out how to best do the project throughout the village. Obviously, I think our first attention will be that worst affected area in the Basel Road area in the west. But after that, does the project just keep going eastbound through the village? Does it start at the west end and east end and meet in the middle and then go north-south? How the lines would get replaced is something we would determine at a future date with the engineers to both maximize our return on investment and economies of scale, but also to minimize the disruptions throughout the village while it's taking place.
Okay, that makes good sense. Well, I didn't realize I would be the only participant here. I would have tried to dream up more questions for you, but that's the key items you've addressed, and you all have my support. We've got signs in our yard supporting this, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, good. I appreciate it. I'm going to check real quick and see if anybody else might have joined. Nope, it looks like it's still us. So what I'll do is also mention I did receive a couple of questions online that I saw. One resident was asking about how this will affect those on fixed incomes. Their property taxes already went up with the reassessments, and then this would increase as well. So how does it affect on the fixed incomes, and what solution do I have for that? Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for those on fixed incomes. We know it'll affect them, and there's not a solution that I can think of right now to help them with that. So I do know that is a problem because we do have a lot of fixed income individuals on retirement and so forth in the village. So I can appreciate the difficult choice they have. Because it will affect them worse than it will affect others that have ability to be employed or work some overtime and whatnot. The example I gave, though, for this individual was a potential alternative to the property tax would have been to do an income tax. The difference is on the income tax, of course, that varies from year to year as well as businesses come and go. The problem with an income tax is the funding isn't secured. It's not securitized by our property values. So on an income tax, we would have to wait for the money to come in each year to be able to spend it. If we did a 1% income tax, that would generate around $900,000 a year. That's just ballpark based on past couple years of expected revenues that we would get on income tax. But we couldn't spend that money necessarily until we started to receive it, because if a business closed or had lower payroll, we might not get all of that. So we'd have to save and do a project and save and then do a project and save. And sorry, I got somebody looking at me wondering what I'm doing. So we'd have to do a project and then save for it. With it being securitized by our property tax, the funding's almost instantly available to us. The bonds are issued. We have that funding to start spending immediately so that we can engage the engineering firms and construction firms to get started and not have to wait for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to develop a revenue stream for it. So that said, you know, I understand that some of our citizens on fixed incomes, as much as they may want to vote in favor of the levy, I understand that they might not be able to, and I can appreciate that. I don't, you know, each family there has to make their own decision. I would not fault anybody if they cannot support this because of that. I hope that they would, but again, I understand that our residents on fixed income, you know, an additional $500 a year on their property tax bill could be too much for them. So it is difficult. And, so I appreciate those that are on fixed income really asking the questions and trying to figure out what is best for them. So that quite frankly was one of the most difficult questions I've received recently, not because of the facts around the circumstance, but just because of the very personal nature of it, that it is a very tough position for them.
Sure, you wish you had a different answer.
Yes, I wish I did. I wish I had some form of solution or a different answer. You know, but unfortunately, the village isn't in a good position either, and so you know, we have to do something.
I get it. I did, in your comment that you were just making, it did bring something to mind that I wanted to ask. When the project starts, is there a firm or a person or somebody that will act as a watchdog to look for waste, such as you know, if a construction company's not being frugal in their efforts, or is that built in? Is there some type of audit built into the contract that we're going to go into?
I'm going to say that, of course, anything can get into the contract, and that is a very good point, and something we should watch for. It's quite frankly possibly the biggest project that I am aware of the village would have engaged in. Even the wastewater plant was only about $8 million. So I do know that the engineering firm that we use right now they've geared themselves towards smaller villages and helping municipalities like Baltimore, and they are very easy to talk to, and would, if they were the ones engaged to oversee the project, I'm sure they will make that effort. We'll also, of course, have the auditors that would audit the expenses if it came up in one of their audits for it. But I'm sure Terry, who is listening right now, is making a note to make sure that we do have that, you know, extra provision in there to make sure we're watching for waste, because we do want to maximize the value for the village. So that, very good question, very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I would think that at a project this size, you would get pretty good prices on piping and materials at least.
Yes, and that's one of the benefits of doing it so large, as opposed to saying, well, we'll work on this area of the village right now, and then in a couple of years, maybe we'll move over to this other area. We can get economies of scale, and we can talk to, when it gets bid out, you know, does it get bid out as one multi-year project, or does it get bid out as several smaller projects, and to maximize our benefits? So another benefit of you know, seeking all of the funding at once could be, like you said, we get those better economies of scale.
Yeah, I'd also like to see a penalty clause built in for failure to perform, or, you know,
those are
over budget things of that nature.
Yeah, those are always in construction contracts. Workmanlike manners and failure to perform, those absolutely would be in there.
Outstanding. That answers all my questions. I greatly appreciate your time, and I thanks for the one-man show.
Hey, no problem. I do have a couple more town halls. I've got one every week now, up until Election Day. I think my next one is next Friday. I tried to plan them out different nights of the week so that if someone's not available on a Monday, maybe they'll be available on a Tuesday, to try to get everybody's questions answered. So join in on the next one. Maybe someone else will have another question, or if you or your neighbors have questions, don't be afraid to reach out to me or join the next meeting. I appreciate it.
Outstanding. Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, you too. And yep. And then
Bye-bye.
I will. Bye, Kevin. Thanks for calling in.
All right.
With that, we'll end this town hall from October 5th. Thanks, everyone. And the next one, like I said, is I believe next Friday, which would be the 16th. And I'll talk to you then.
Take care.